those spiral bands continuing to spiral into the remains of Harvey there along the coast. And we also got this amazing sunset. Looks a little bit out of focus. I don't know what was going on with the camera there, but I had to bring down the manual focus down to about 2 or 3 feet, and it looked good in the camera, but looks really off in this picture. I don't know really what's going on here, but the colors are what's important, and very beautiful. Looks a little bit like Mammatus overhead there. So just taking a quick look at that. We're continuing to get some record rainfall down on the coast, and I'm going to pull up the rainfall amounts here and compare that with what we had yesterday. There we go, additional 8 inches. That's about the highest we've seen over the past 24 hours, and that's going to be just north of Houston, around the Huntsville, Woodlands area. And yesterday and the day before that, this is the area here northeast of Houston that was getting very heavily hit. So a lot of the heavier rainfall is starting to move inland, and yeah, I did notice a 9.67 there in Houston. So they are getting hammered there. And one of our family friends down north of Houston, they're doing they've got evacuations going on down there, but fortunately the terrain is a little bit higher. Once you start getting north of Houston, you get a little bit into a little more rolling terrain. But you can see on the western periphery how close the dry area is, from about Athens down to Corsicana, just 0 over the past 24 hours, and then very spotty preset through the Dallas-Fort Worth area down to Waco. But for the most part, the heavier rainfall amounts confined to College Station, down to about Flatonia and Columbus and southward, and we don't have any reports down on the coast. I guess a lot of network stations were knocked out, but looks like they've been in a pretty good shape there too. Also getting the offshore wind component down on the coast, so that's helping to keep the water levels down in that region. So for today, let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, this is the rain gauge data, and you can see where we have purple. This shows where the major flooding is. So this is a combination of precipitation plus rain that's already on the ground. And for example, west-southwest of Houston, you can see we have some gauge data come up. Yeah, right there you can see the levels are trending upward into that major range, and there's a record line right here located right there. So we're obviously going to eclipse that in the next 12 hours. And let me bring up some more data here. This is going to be northwest Houston. We're already pretty much above that major line there. And I'm not sure where the flood stage 157, so yeah, that's going to be pretty much above moderate here. Oh, actually, right here, that's the flood stage right there, so we're way up above that. And let's see here, East Houston, also in trouble there, flood stage 26 feet, which is right there. So you can kind of get an idea of how extensive the flooding is. And if you want to look at more of this data, that's going to be the West Gulf River Forecast Center, and they've got a page here that has all the flood data through that area. So you can check them out and see what the streams are doing out around the Houston area and back to the west. Okay, so this is the picture we have this evening. The remains of Harvey still located around Houston. Looks like the system has pushed back out into the Gulf waters. And we can pick out that cyclonic circulation right there. Looks like it's directly south of Galveston, located right about there. And we're probably picking up a little bit of baroclinicity in the system with the dry, cool air coming offshore and the much warmer air out in the Gulf. See this 86 over 75. And let me take a look at digital atmosphere here. This is kind of a closer look at things. And we can see out towards San Antonio, dew points in the mid-60s out in that area. And I'm looking at temperatures here, widespread low to mid-70s. And where we're at, we've got 71.2 here and a few 60s. One there at Jacksonville. That looks to be the cold spot in Texas this afternoon. And we've also got a system working up the Gulf Coast here. We can take a look at the advisories here. This is tropical, I guess, tropical depression 10, potential tropical cyclone 10. That's moving up the coast, but they're not expecting too much development on that. The trend is going to take that just up to the outer banks of the Carolinas and then recurving very quickly offshore, so that's likely not going to affect the northeast coast there. And the bulletin for that. There's the discussion for that tropical advisory right there on the east coast. Problems with organization there. With the sheer increasing chances for this system to become a tropical storm is diminishing. So that's the outlook for that. So pretty much confined to 35, 40, and then later in the period, 60 to 70 extratropical there. And then we'll take a look at the advisory for Harvey. And a lot of discussion there about the rainfall there. They're talking about the erratic eastward drift. They're calling the motion 110 at 30 or 3. So that's going to be towards the east-southeast. And there's our wind forecast and position forecast. So this is showing a northeastward drift after tomorrow morning. Progressively northeast. So that's going to take it into southeast Texas around the area between Houston and Beaumont. Winds pretty much steady at 40 to 45 and then tapering as that gets inland. So as far as the large-scale picture, here's what we've got. We've got a long-wave trough off the east coast and what looks like a very broad long-wave trough off the east coast. Pretty good medium wave coming through the Illinois area into Missouri. Looks like another wave off the east coast right there, and we're getting the ridge and coming in behind. So maybe a bit of a warming trend there for the Dakotas as that moves in, and the larger scale ridge starting to build in. So it looks like once this tropical storm is gone from Texas, we're going to come under the influence of this ridge. So we should see things starting to warm up here. And that's a close-up look at the upper air patterns. This is up at about 40,000 feet. 100-knot jet over Tennessee there. This is the polar front jet. There's the other segment coming back in from the Dakotas. Flow is becoming a lot faster as we get into this kind of like a late fall pattern here, which I'm going to show you on the GFS as we get towards the end here. Okay, and there's a look at Harvey there. And you can see a distinct difference in the cloud pattern from north to south. See, here we have a lot of the cirriform clouds, a lot of the convective elements located right here. And then on the other side, we've got these cloud streets. These are kind of like stratocumulus clouds. And this is kind of an effect of drier air circulating around the west side of the system, and the dry air circulating around the south side like that. Looks like a little bit of dust or something going on out in West Texas. We'll have to take a look at that. You can see that there, something going on. flow looks like it's out of the east, maybe. It's kind of puzzling. We'll have to check out what that is. Let me check the surface pattern here. We're kind of under a northeasterly flow in that region, so it could be either dust or smoke. I have no idea. We've got a few viewers out in that area, so maybe they can fill us in. Okay, let me take a look at the chat here. We have Ron Chalfant, another busy day in the weather. David Moore joining us, and Mary Walsh. Ryan Toomey is talking about the day being kind of sad as the casualties keep adding up. And let me see what I've got for casualties, and Wikipedia I would probably kind of trust for this. I'm sure there's editors trying to keep up on the casualties, and I don't think we have a consensus here on the number of what kind of impact this has had. So anyway, yeah, I don't see anything in here. We'll just have to wait a few days, and hopefully the figures are not too serious here. We have Fred Reamer up in North Dakota, well away from this weather. Funwood Tech and Kevin McKinney. Have Carl Berghoff and Megan John. Good evening from Minnesota there. Alexi Walsh and Eddie W. Carl Berghoff, Burl H., Sue M., Megan John. They're talking about mesoscale meteorology and mid-latitudes by Markowski and Richardson. Yeah, it's a very good book. Taco Bell joining us, and Megan John up there at St. Cloud State University. Brian Harp. Maybe not too late to join in. Yeah, definitely. We started not really at 8, maybe 8:01 or 8:02. That's pretty normal. Thomas Fortner from Sioux Falls reporting family is doing okay, which is great news. Megan John says the GOES imagery is so incredible. And yeah, while we're on that subject, maybe we can take a look at the infrared. It's a little bit different picture there, but this is a little bit more sensitive to the convection and the higher clouds. And we can see the system appears to be on the move. It may be going faster than what the models had been indicating, but following the same general track that the European model had forecast right from the start. So maybe we'll see things gradually clearing out in the Houston area a little faster than forecast. At least that's what I'm hoping here. Radar at this time looking like this here. Still a lot of convective elements moving into the Houston area. This area just off the coast near Galveston continues to be a region for development of these convective elements right here. And they just push northwestward into the Houston area. Right up I-45 and into that region right there. So it looks like at least one more night of heavy rain continuing in that area. And then maybe things will shift a little further to the northeast. And here we can see the impact of the drier air circulating into Harvey here. This has been kind of an ongoing process all weekend. And a lot of the stronger, deeper, richer tropical moisture that's been circulating around to the north side. And by the time it gets around to the west side, most of that latent heat has been expended. So this right here is kind of like the dominant development area, and also a little tail of convection right there. So it looks like things are kind of on their way towards the northeast there. Here's our synoptic scale pattern showing high pressure across the northeast U.S. Looks like a bit of a warm front coming together with that system along the coast, probably becoming a little bit baroclinic here. And then we have our system up in the Canadian prairies, very strong gradient from north to south across the prairie provinces. So we're going to go with maybe a little bit of a stationary front in that area. That's a ripe area for development if we can get a system coming from the west to pick up that boundary. And there's one lurking off the coast there. But that may be heading mostly up into the Yukon and Alaska. They tend to move north this time of year. And the southwestern U.S. under the influence of this big upper-level high. Looks like it's pretty much centered over Nevada and Utah. Okay, we'll take a look at the soundings. This is the Fort Worth sounding, and you can see all the dry air aloft. This is what's feeding into the backside of Harvey. Those northeast winds right there. Very high dew point depressions, looks like about 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So those are going to be relative humidity is about 10 to 20% aloft. So anywhere above 8 to 10,000 feet, plenty of dry air up there. And of course, some of that will eventually find its way down to the surface as we get mixing taking place. And that's what's happening out over the Gulf waters there. So some of that dry air gradually coming down to the surface. And in Corpus Christi, we've got a sounding for them. And this is also showing some of the dry air aloft, but it's confined to the layers above 19 to 20,000. Still quite a bit of humidity there in the lower and mid levels. And it looks like, from what we're seeing here, this is Corpus Christi here, so they're probably getting some of the wraparound from the north. That looks to be what's happening, whereas Fort Worth is more in the dry air. Okay. It's probably about time to head into the forecast here. So that's pretty much the analysis. Just watching Harvey as it drifts northeast there. And we can kind of see the center of the circulation a little bit on the radar. Definitely offshore there. So these elements moving northeast to southwest. So just with a very limited radar data, we can probably go with a location of about 28.1 and 95.3, somewhere in that area. And I would probably go to satellite to narrow that down a little bit better. Okay, let's head into the forecast here. All right, so here is our location. Harvey looks like it's about 80 miles offshore. High resolution rapid refresh going for a center about 28.0, 95.6. Let me see how that matches up. So the high resolution rapid refresh thinks that the center is out in this area right here somewhere. So I don't know. I think the system may be outrunning the model just a little bit. But just the general trend overnight, looks like probably more of these spiral bands coming into the Houston area tonight. And then you can see Houston starting to dry out here by dawn. So precipitation gradually shutting down and moving more into Louisiana. And then by tomorrow morning, system is just looks like it's southeast of Galveston there. And based on the movement I've seen so far, I wouldn't be surprised if it was already making landfall at this point around Lake Charles. The NAM model. A little bit different. It's going more of a, yeah, let me zoom this in here. It appears to be going for more of a stationary trend. Okay, so we're loading up the frames here. Verifying the center, the NAM has it at 28.3, 95.5. So that's out in this area right here. That also looks to be a little bit off, but the trend over night, look at that very slow movement. And by tomorrow when we do the webcast, the NAM thinks it's still going to be just southwest of the Port Jackson area, just south of Houston. And then it goes for a movement north into East Texas, then brings the remains up into Lufkin and Shreveport, Texarkana by Thursday and Friday. So we'll probably know here in about 6 to 9 hours whether the NAM is out to lunch there. Then we'll look at the GFS. GFS also going for a stationary outcome here. And that's kind of surprising. I just, kind of like sat down here and started looking at the panels. And by tomorrow, it's got it stationary south of Houston. And if that happened, that would be bad for Houston. That would bring more of these convective elements over Houston just over the next 1 to 2 days. And then finally, it moves the system northeastward Wednesday and Thursday inland into the East Texas area. This is pretty much in line with what the NAM has. So for a tiebreaker, I guess we can use the European model. What do we got for movement here? Tomorrow morning, got it south of Houston. And look at that, a little bit more of a progressive movement. This is Wednesday morning. About 36 hours from now, has it going across Lake Charles and then up into Louisiana. So a little bit faster there. And we've seen a little bit better results with this European model. And then let's see what happens with that big system coming in later for next week. Yep, bringing a big old 1028 millibar high in. Cold front coming south on Monday. And building that up to 1032 millibars, very strong for this time of year. And that should bring a pretty good piece of cold air southward into the Great Plains around midweek, around the 5th and 6th. So we're still looking for that to come southward. And if this had happened during the December-January time frame, I think we would be looking at good possibility of snow here in Texas. This is what we see with these northers that come south out of Canada, a very similar appearance, except this time of year it's obviously not quite that strong. And European model bringing a system up from the Caribbean or north of Puerto Rico around Thursday. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. It's got 967 for a pressure there, so that's going to be like a Cat 3 storm there, if that pans out. But that's 240 hours down the road. We'll just have to wait on that. Okay, so really, I don't have any gut feeling on what's going to happen here. It's very hard to beat the models just with experience and just rules of thumb and that kind of thing. About all we can do here is just kind of monitor the trends and look for departures in the forecast location compared to the like 6 to 9 hour forecasts. So about 1 in the morning, if we're still seeing this thing spinning south of Houston, we would be probably looking for this to be stationary over the next day or two. On the other hand, if we see it up in this area, we know that we're looking at a much different outcome from what we saw in the panels earlier there. Okay, Mike Estwick says his friends are safe in Lufkin. That's great to hear. Megan John mentioning the dry slot there. Kevin McKinney mentioning the F5 tornado in the Chicago area. That was back in 1990. Yeah, that was a very serious storm just before the NEXRAD units came online. Naples, Florida had over 12 inches of rain over the past 48 hours, so they've been getting it there, definitely 4 to 6 inches in some locations. So thanks for that, Ryan. He says the tail end is hanging over the Florida area, the South Florida region. Kevin McKinney says the Illinois area has had a history of violent tornadoes from spring in summer and into November a few years ago. So Fred Raymer not looking forward to the cold air. Ryan talking about months and months of cleanup for Houston. And Kevin says, let's hope Harvey starts moving. Should the Carolinas have anything to worry about with 10? It's going to be a pretty fast-moving storm. There's probably going to be a little bit of localized flooding here and there, but it's not going to be the kind of system like we're seeing with Harvey here. In fact, there's a tornado warning. Where did I see that? There was one. Yeah, there's one on the coast here of Louisiana, and then another one just popped up in the last couple minutes coming into the Ship Channel area. Yeah, central Galveston County. Radar indicated rotation, and let's see if we can get a look at that storm here. So I guess we're looking at the meso right there. We've got outbounds located right here and inbounds. So I think we're looking for continued development of the cell. 20 versus, got about 25 to 30 knots of rotation. It's not very strong right now. Okay, here's another one. Yeah, this is probably what they're looking at, this couplet here. Yeah, we're seeing only about 20 or 25 knots of rotation on this. So probably what they're forecasting is for a little continued development of this system here as it moves inland. And that'll probably be moving into the Texas City area here in about 20 minutes from now or so. So, yeah, if you're in that Texas City area, keep an eye on this. And there's going to be more of these cells upstream over the next couple of hours that will also move inland during the evening hours. Has Harvey affected any orders being shipped? Not really. We're not impacted very much here. We're pretty far north. In fact, the winds here are only about 5 knots or so. Michael Burrell got his books today, ready to get reading for a good while. Yep, glad to appreciate the order. And can I tell if early fall long-term trends? I don't know. I'll take a look, and I doubt it. We're probably going to get that ridge building back in, and then maybe a little bit of cool air here for the beginning of September, but we still got a month to go before we really start having a winter take hold. So I'm not too sure that fall is on its way here. Okay, let me look through the chat real quick. Let's see if there's anything else in here. I was going to bring Justin Pulliam and David Holcomb in as moderators, but I don't see them in here, so I can't flag them because we had a pretty busy night here on Friday. And chat got a little bit out of control there, but thanks to Sue M and a couple of other people, we were able to mostly keep that under control. Okay, I think that's about all I got for tonight. Thank you for watching, and we will see you tomorrow night. Take care.